And what's going on, Unbelievers? It's your boy...
Russell Ryan. I said his name backwards.
Thanks, Ted. I'm here to let you know that we were not able to get together and record our new episode this week. Sorry about that. Instead, we are posting the interview I recently did with author Tim R. Swartz of Jeff the Mongoose fame, where we talk about a lot of fascinating and interesting topics related to his newest book called Mimics, The Others Among Us. And this interview, this is from my new YouTube show called Rus Ryan's Unbelievers Skeptic, which you can find on the Unbelievers Podcast YouTube channel. So be sure and subscribe to the Unbelievers Podcast on YouTube, give it a like and all that. I will have more of these kind of episodes up very soon, as well as more live streams. So check that out. And now, without further ado, I hope you enjoy the very first episode of Rus Ryan's Believer Skeptic.
On a trip with the Raelian fleet, had a spaceship land right at my feet. Then a girl walked outside with x-rays in her eyes and a message intended for me. She said, "Take me to your leader. Take me to your leader. I've got lost information of cosmic creation. Take me to your leader, man."
Yeah, hello and welcome to the Unbelievers Podcast presents Rus Ryan's Believer Skeptic, the show that brings in the top names in the paranormal to help us find out who is the believer and who is the skeptic. I'm Rus Ryan, and I'm, of course, joined by co-host Jack Sass. Hello, Jack.
Hey, Russ. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited for this all-new interview. I don't know what this is supposed to be. Interview, debate show, Believer Skeptic. I think I already called it Unbeliever Skeptic, and I will do that. But this is definitely Believer Skeptic. And I think it's going to work good because
with that, sure.
It is hard. Yes, I know. But it's Unbelievers Podcast presents Rus Ryan's Believer Skeptic. Kind of keep the name short. So I think this is going to be a great format for you and I, because I feel like I believe in a lot of stuff. You know, I don't know if I get tricked a lot, but Jack,
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I definitely get tricked a lot, but I do consider myself a believer in a lot of things as far as the paranormal goes. And I consider you a pretty big skeptic. It's hard to nail down anything paranormal wise you believe in. You love it. You're very obsessed with it.
I love everything paranormal, but yeah, I tend to kind of look for a more scientific explanation for things. But then again, paranormal can be scientific, so that works out.
That's true. It can be some rare times.
Both.
And hey, maybe us having people on and discussing things, maybe we'll find out, who is the believer, who is the skeptic. But this is, of course, an interview show, and we have got a great guest on tonight. Author, friend of the show. He has a new book out now called Mimics, The Others Among Us. Let's welcome to the show our buddy, Tim R. Swartz. Tim Swartz, welcome to Rus Ryan's Presents Believer Skeptic.
Well, Russ, Jack, thank you very much for having me on tonight. And I have to say that I love your intro music. That's great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say something about that myself. That was a rocking song there.
Yeah, man, I like we had to get a little riled up, a little Ryle Russin style in here to get things started with a nice rocking Take Me to Your Leader from Candy Now. That's going to be our official music on this show. But Tim, welcome to the show. It is good to talk to you again, and I'm excited to talk about your new book, which is great. And look, I'll show it here. Look, we'd be fancy. Mimics, The Others Among Us is Tim's new book that is out now, and it's a fantastic book. And I wanted to let's start getting into what actual mimics, because this is kind of a concept in the paranormal that doesn't come up very much, but then you realize so many things can fall into this category of mimics. And I like your header in the book. It says, they look human, they act human, but they're not human. They are the others. And that's what this is about. And you touch on so many different elements of the paranormal that can be considered nearly human, but not in mimics.
Yeah, it's a hard subject to discuss, actually, since we put the book out and we've been doing these shows, trying to really pin down just exactly what these things are, it's a monumental task. And since you've read the book, I mean, there's all kinds of different things out there that have appeared to us being humanity, throughout history. At one time, people would call them, like deities or angels or fairies, the good people, up right into modern times. We don't believe in those kind of things anymore, or at least most people don't. But now, maybe we'd be a little bit more accepting with the idea of being visited by extraterrestrials. So, whatever these things are, it's like the book jacket says, they can look like us, they can act like us, but it's obvious that they're not.
Yeah, and there's so many different categories and things that, just being into the paranormal that you touch on with this. And I'm pretty sure your first into this was John Keel. You mentioned John Keel very early in the book, and you talk about, at least I've heard you talk about a pamphlet or some kind of paranormal magazine called Our Haunted Planet that kind of set this seed for you.
Yeah, it was a paperback book, actually, by John Keel that I ran across when I was a kid, but you could actually still go to drugstores and buy nonfiction paranormal type books. And in one section of Keel's book, it's actually titled Mimics of Man. And it's actually only just a couple of paragraphs, and he uses that part as a jumping off point for, other subjects that he's interested in. And he seems to kind of have the idea of maybe like physical creatures, something that is physical just like we are, but is not human. It's a mimic. It's some other species that probably is as intelligent as we are, lives on the edges of our society. Keel suggests that they live like maybe in big cities where they could basically blend in unnoticed. There are all kinds of characters in cities. So something that's not human but looks human could probably get away with it. So, that always impressed me, that idea that we may not be at the top of the food chain. All right. That, I mean, we've gone for many, many years thinking that we're the be all and do all of species on this planet. Well, what if we're not? What if there is, I'm not saying this for everything that we talk about in the book with the others, but, what if there are predators of people that can look like us in order to get close? And of course, the other idea is that there are prey species that mimic other things so as to not be eaten. So, you could go both ways.
Yeah, that kind of happens in nature a lot, right? Like things can adapt to look like, are there certain snakes that can adapt to look like other snakes, even though they're not venomous or at all. They just kind of do that as almost a survival method. But the thing is, yeah, a lot of like what people call humanoids is what would fall into this. You can't, Mothman and things like that and winged weirdies, that's like way off the human path as far as looking, as far as things in the paranormal. But there's something in your book. I mean, there's so many, I really suggest, hey, look, I'll keep plugging your book. Okay, check out Mimics, the Others Among Us guys. Check it out. But there's early on, there was one great story that I'd never heard of, and I definitely am going to be picking some of the things you talk about in your book as topics to talk about. But one thing I want to talk about with you is something that fascinated me. I didn't really know about it. It's from 2004, and it is I don't know if to call it an alien or a mimic, but is what you call the girl dressed like a ballerina.
Right. Yeah, that's a perfect example of the type of stories that we referred to. And this happened in Great Britain, and it was actually a local politician, a guy by the name of Adrian Hicks. And, he was out in his community. It was one Saturday afternoon, like everybody else is kind of enjoying the nice weather, doing a bit of shopping. And he noticed in the crowd of people on the street, there was this woman who just really stood out to him and obviously to other people as well. And he said that she was dressed in very unusual, bright, sparkly type of clothing, not quite, the current fashion style, with like a dress that was almost like a ballerina's tutu, right?
It's very alien looking as well. I'm going to pop the picture up here real quick.
Yeah,
Look, this is the artist rendition of the girl dressed like a ballerina, but definitely not an actual girl.
Well, and it looks like, on that picture that she's wearing sunglasses, but he said her eyes were actually big like that, big, very big, and kind of wrapped around the side of her face. But he said that, and he said that she walked kind of with an odd, almost like a penguin like gait, I suppose, like a side to side motion, and that her hands, you see in the drawing, she's got her hands up like that. And he said that as she walked, she was twirling them, but that she was acting rather touristy, just taking in all the sights and just obviously having a good time. And he said that he forever regrets, even though he wanted to. And this is something significant. He regrets not going up to her and asking, you're not from around here, or something along those lines, just because she was so peculiar looking. But against really his better judgment, he decided just to leave her alone. And that's something that you'll hear quite often with these kinds of encounters, is that when people interact with these entities, we're calling them the others, a lot of times they'll just throw open their door and invite them in. And then afterwards they'll be like, I don't know why I did that. I would never just open my door and let a stranger come into my house and then me offer him, like tea and cookies.
So Jack, I'll throw to you. If you see this girl, are you ignoring her, or are you going, where'd you get your cool Bono shades from? What's your reaction?
Honestly, I'm gonna disagree with the whole feeling bad about not going up to talk to her, because I don't know, if I saw somebody that well out of place and it just didn't look right to me, that would honestly be threatening to me. So
it's off-putting enough on its own. Sure,
I wouldn't do it personally, but that's just me. But it does make me kind of wonder with what you had mentioned, there's the whole phenomenon of children with black eyes, the black-eyed kids, Becks or whatever, that all they want to do is just be invited in, pretty much. So it does kind of come along that same similar line there.
Black-eyed kids are actually, Tim, you touch on those in the book as well. Mm-hmm. And you also have a section where you talk about, so a lot of people know, of course, about the black-eyed kids, strange kids that show up at your door, claiming they're in some kind of it sounds like a scam. Sounds like something I would fall for. But you also go into a little bit about black-eyed boys, where there is some category of these where they're just called black-eyed boys. I wasn't aware of that.
Well, it's I think it's kind of based on different writers and their perspective of the situation. Plus, you have some of the articles that and some of the sources that we took from that go right from really the earliest cases. So, you have them referred to as, black-eyed boys, black-eyed children, black-eyed kids. There's even been reports of black-eyed adults, but it's the black-eyed kids that really seems to garner the most attention. I think because that really stomach punches most most of us.
No one likes creepy kids and dolls.
Exactly. Think about black-eyed clowns. How would people react if black-eyed clowns would be coming to your doors?
Pretty much anything with black eyes, really. It's unnatural.
But what's odd with a lot of these cases is that even before the people will see these kids' eyes, a majority of these cases, people will just almost immediately get this like a feeling of dread and terror that just it's almost a primal instinct that wells up within them when they first open the door and the kids are out there, because they look like maybe a normal, somewhat disheveled looking children. But a lot of people will comment and say that they felt like that their life was in danger, that they were in the presence of a predator, and that at any moment they were going to be killed. And this was before they saw the black eyes. So now,
it's that kind of aura that these things give off, almost like the ballerina giving that vibe to people, like stay away. It's almost like some kind of natural, I guess it would be more unnatural to us, kind of aura or feeling that they can get out there to mean, stay away. I'm here. I am visiting. There's so many great stories like that. But as far as like the others, you bring it way back in this. Of course, you talk about angels and things like that, but the good people and the different versions of fairies and fae being mimicked, especially like the Alush and the Shanakay and things like that. All those fae of Mexico, they get some good representation in your book too, as far as that. And I of course I like the Alush, even though they look like candy. But I am a big fan of the fae of Mexico. So how do you feel about them as far as the others go?
Oh, well, Scott Corrales wrote an excellent chapter. And that's the great thing about this book is that we have myself and Sean Castile, and then other contributors like Scott Corrales and Paul Eno, Nigel Watson, even the late Timothy Green Beckley. We found some articles that he wrote in the past that just, fit perfectly within this book. But Scott was able to bring us just some excellent examples of these kind of, you could almost describe them as like elemental types of creatures from Mexico, Central America, and South America. And it's amazing how similar you will find these stories just all across the planet. I mean, there'll be regional differences, cultural differences, but once you really, boil them all down together, there are interesting similarities with all of these. The main thing and the main point of this book is the ubiquitousness of that human shape. Up to the point you talked about the good people, like the fairies of Great Britain, Scandinavia, places like that, who would be practically indistinguishable from humans. Not like the Disney version of fairies, like Tinkerbell with the wings and the short skirt. No, I mean these things looked. If you ran across one in the woods, you would probably think it was a fellow human being.
That's true. Yeah. Well, artist depictions may not be as kind to them as far as.
So see something like that.
That's the picture you had to throw up just then.
Yeah, you could pretty much tell that you're not dealing with a human there. But once again, though, you have that human shape. So why that human shape? All right, that's one of the big questions in this book. Is are we anthropomorphizing these things? Are we seeing what we want to see? Are they showing us what we want to see? So, I mean, there's all kinds of different questions that we ask in this book, and I'm sure that some readers will be disappointed because we don't just come out and say, well, this is the definitive answer, because there is no definitive answer, not yet, at least.
No, and the fact that you kind of start with the fae and fairies and stuff like that, Jack, don't you find it weird that you can pretty much find the same fairy lore in almost every country? I believe it started in Iran and stuff like that, in Persia, ancient Persia. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, they're. I mean, well, it's like with a lot of things. I mean, human beings we're very creative, but we're also very kind of limited in our creative scope. Especially, I think when it comes down to the way that we perceive things of an unnatural nature. Like a lot of like pareidolia will come into play in that we'll project the way we look onto certain things that we see in the environment to make it either less threatening or more threatening, depending on how we feel about it. Well,
you think they're a separate race? So some people think that these are actually, that the fae and the fairies and all that come from a separate race, that in ancient times, once the age of iron and weapons started, that we defeated this race and they realized they were not going to be able to defeat the humans. So they kind of retreated back. And that's why silver and things like that and iron are worn as protection from them. I don't know where wearing your shirt inside out comes from, though, but that seems to be another theme that you either if you're talking about, Irish leprechauns or fairies or the fae or the Alush or any of them, that putting your shirt on backwards is always reported as a way to stop things.
Yeah, who are you asking, me or?
No, I'm just saying let's all put our shirts on inside out real quick.
I was confused by that as well. I'm good. I'm going to leave this one on the way it is because it fits.
Jack, you made some really good points though about how I do agree that you have these amazing similarities, all across the planet, all across different time periods, because of this kind of inability at times to look beyond that human shape. We do have zoomorphic entities in these cultures as well. Creatures that have, say, like mermaids. That's a perfect example. Part human, part fish. But when it comes to the beings that really seem to go out of their way to interact with us, then we're getting into categories that kind of take it beyond the creatures that kind of like waited for you in the swamp, to draw you out and then to drag you down to the bottom and eat you, to the point of these things actually trying to help contribute to society and culture, especially back in the very early dregs of history, where you have these stories of these things that, and again, I mean, there's all kinds of stories. You have the ones that, came from the stars, or the ones that came from caverns or from the sea, human looking, but, even the people then knew that they weren't dealing with human, and these things would give the secrets of, say, like agriculture or mathematics, and you get the same kind of stories then throughout history, say like in the medieval times, when the alchemists were trying to discover the secrets of the Philosopher's Stone. And then you had these really interesting stories of like the black cloak strangers, very similar to the Men in Black of modern UFO lore, who would come to these people's houses and give them ideas and certain new chemicals to experiment with, never leading, of course, to the actual Philosopher's Stone being able to turn lead into gold, but instead would lead to other interesting discoveries in what we now know as chemistry.
Yeah.
It's almost like we need to be nudged along. Like we've had to, that's a big part of
Right.
course, Ancient Aliens is basically based on the idea that we need, that the human race need to be nudged along the entire time. And then people will argue against that. But it's really weird that there are so many different entities in different cultures that are like kind of present doing these things. I like you brought up mermaids too, because that's definitely, I'm glad I wouldn't consider those mimics. I don't think you do either. Because
half mimic. The other
they can fool you for a minute, maybe. Yeah.
Well, they're mimicking two things. I guess they're still mimicking. I mean,
they can't. Yeah, they couldn't decide who they're mimicking, right?
Well, I mean, there are the stories though of like I suppose a certain species or subspecies of mermaids that could actually come out of the water, and when they do, it's like the fairy tale, The Little Mermaid. Their bottom part would turn into legs, at least for a certain amount of time, and long enough that they could actually, find human lovers and have families and raise children, and until the time that they decided they wanted to go back, and then they'd go back and leave everybody behind. That's
like that Tom Hanks movie.
Yeah,
sure. That's a great
Splash?
one.
Was it
Splash? It was called Splash. Daryl Hannah.
Right.
Wow.
Well, see, I mean,
there's some good memories of childhood, Jack.
That's a perfect example.
Splash tonight.
That's a perfect example, though, of the same kind of stories that have been handed down, for generation after generation. Again, I mean, a lot of them are just stories. But
there's a lot of sexual stories I've noticed, especially ones mentioned in your book. People like to write a lot about, not saying you in particular, you mentioned a lot of books in your book there's one, it's what was it called? Free Yourself, or Love Yourself, but it says love yourself, but elf is in all capitals towards the end of it. It's like a Scandinavian guide to fairy lovemaking.
Yeah, Iceland. The woman who wrote it was from Iceland. And I had to include that in there because, I mean, I remember when the story first came out years ago, and it was just, fascinating and a little audacious, I think, that somebody in this time would dare come forward and say that they've had sexual encounters with Icelandic elves and that they make great lovers. Now, what's unusual is that at the same time, you'll have people who come forward and say that, well, I've had sexual relations with extraterrestrials from UFOs. All right. So now, even though that sounds just as crazy, I think nowadays people may be a little bit more willing to accept the idea that there could be extraterrestrials that could come down and have sex with us, while the idea of elves being around or being able to have sex with them, well, that's crazy stuff.
Yeah, I feel like aliens is definitely more common, like, to hear of than this is the first time I've ever heard I've ever heard of elves doing well. I mean, really, elves in general. I mean, you think about them from like movies and whatnot. Like,
well, I thought you were going to say cookies.
Like
I think about talking about
the cookies.
Elves.
People
cookie
have
elves, the Keebler elves, the cookie elves.
Conceived notion already from media of what an elf is, and you're thinking, all right, you don't really hear stories about people having sex with them at any point in time, but aliens, I believe, is a lot more common to hear of.
Yeah. Well, and that has a lot to do with our cultural and social expectations. Now, if you were to go back 200, not even 200 years ago, I mean, the people in Iceland now still believe that there are elves out in the wildlands. But really, I mean, you go, back 100 years ago, and the idea that the elves and fairies and other good people types of entities would be interested in us sexually and vice versa. Yeah, why not? So I think that we're dealing with the same phenomena. It just takes on different faces as time goes on. And, like I said, we live in a modern era, space travel and all that, UFOs could be extraterrestrials. So why not? That's what we would almost expect to happen. It sounds scientific. Sounds like it would make sense.
So what you're saying is that you believe that a lot of this mimicry, these creatures that do mimic, would be more of extraterrestrial in nature than
no.
Oh no! So
no,
it would be
not
a terrestrial thing.
Oh yes, yeah. Now I'm not saying that this phenomena, excludes extraterrestrials. Why not? So
it's like a separate entity.
Yeah. I think that there are a lot of separate entities because there seems to be groups that exhibit paranormal abilities, the ability to disappear and reappear whenever they want to. Shape-shifting abilities, things like that. There are some that appear to be physical, straight out physical creatures like we are. That could be, say, maybe a cousin species that
possibly evolved alongside of us.
Exactly.
Type of thing.
Right. Like how we almost think of cryptids, even though they're a little further off. These cannot be considered cryptids. And as far as the alien element of I'll bring it back to the sexual thing again, but as far as the alien, the abduction thing, one of the, even if it seems like that now that we're going to talk about as far as others go, let's talk a little bit. You do briefly talk about David Huggins in your book. And there we go. That's the great alien Crescent. And I want to say, I believe Crescent is actually in our chat tonight. I saw her a little bit earlier. I saw some hashtag rubbing heads in there, but Crescent being a very, very much recent I guess you could consider her and other, even though alien species, but definitely a mimic, definitely trying to mimic us in a very lazy way, almost just popping on. If it's a gray alien, just with a share wig on. I don't know if you can really see it from my stream. The actual painting is on that door right there.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of in my background there, but I didn't want to knock it down by having it up here. But yeah, David Huggins and Crescent, great one. But also the idea of abductions, even when sexual relations humans aren't involved. It seems to be all about reproduction, about whatever the species they're saving, about getting sperm. We recently covered, and for listeners, our next episode would be about an abductee named Carl Higdon, who talks about the fact that he was abducted but sent back because they found out he had a vasectomy. And they're like, well, there's only one reason we really brought you out here. And if you can't do this, then you're kind of out of here. So
he would still have sperm production. He just can't.
Well, you should have been on the episode. I didn't think about that. Yeah, he definitely still had. They're not going through they'll go through the trouble of flying 136,000 light years to get here, pick him up, take him there, but they're not going through all that.
No, not going to fix a vasectomy.
They don't want to get the needles out and just draw it out by hand, I suppose.
No, I guess not. Yeah, a little shout out to
Chris. That would be too hard.
One of our favorite new. I was very excited when I was looking through your book, the Mimics Among Us, and seeing Crescent make an appearance. So that's great that she's out there. And another one, if you're talking about, as far as passing and as far as being a mimic and being able to be in public, there's a great story in your book about a baby and a mother in a mall. And I'll let you tell a little bit of that. There's where this baby and this mother were definitely could be considered mimics. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and we have several stories involving odd babies. And once again, though, you have to go back and look at the old stories of the changelings, which were supposedly fairies. The fairies would come in, steal your baby, and then leave one of their own behind, as a replacement. Sometimes
like a cuckoo bird.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So you're seeing kind of the same stories being played out today, but once again we're going back to that. People are thinking extraterrestrials or aliens, but once again, same kind of story. So the mother and the baby. This was it involved a woman who had already had UFO experiences than her mother. They had gone to a department store and they were waiting to check out. And all of a sudden, through the door came this woman with a kind of like just a very bare budget baby carriage, pushing it along.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned that whoever this woman was and his baby, the baby was too young and they were not prepared to be out in public. Right. As far there was no baby bottle, there was no like
blankets.
Changing thing. It was like, nothing. It was just like you couldn't. If you saw a baby out there this young, you would kind of there would be cause for concern.
No, this baby was just kind of like plopped down into this stroller, and the mother deliberately kind of went up and then like shoved past these people waiting to go to the cash register. And the baby, they said, had was very tiny, almost like it was premature, except that it had like a round head, big round blue eyes. They said that the woman who was a friend of actually the UFO researcher Kathleen Martin told me on an interview that the baby had almost like anime eyes, the great
like
big
Pokemon eyes.
Right. And the eyes seemed to be way too big for its head. But both her and her mother got the impression that this baby was very well aware of what was going on. It just had like a mature look. It was hard for them to explain for such a tiny baby, but the baby was very aware of what was going on, that they were looking at it, and it was looking back.
This was like a kid's clothing shop, right? It wasn't that whoever this woman was, and this very, I know a lot of babies look like Winston Churchill. So usually not female ones, but I know it's a kind of a common trope with babies, tropes of babies.
Well, but, even her mother afterwards said to her, "Did you see that weird kid?" But one of the odd things about it is that during that, and it was just a very short interlude. And, after this woman and the baby went past, they went around an aisle and disappeared.
Yeah, that was the interesting part of the story. Is that suddenly
they couldn't find him in the store,
like just gone.
Just gone. And the people who witnessed this, they were, kind of concerned about this because I guess they, besides the fact that there's a very alien, weird looking others mimic baby, things didn't look right. It looked as if this baby was not being taken care of. So they go out front and they don't they run into some Men in Black kind of figures out front who basically tell them, you didn't see anything in there. You just go back and buy your baby clothes. You didn't see anything. And they never saw him, right?
Exactly. Well, and the other weird thing was that the other people that were standing in line during that moment that they were looking at this woman and her weird kid, they said that everything else seemed to be kind of frozen in place. Nobody else seemed to be reacting, or it was like everything was happening just for these two people. And then after the woman and the kid disappeared, it's like time started up again. So like you said, they went outside to see if they could, see where this woman and this kid went to. And all of a sudden there had been a couple of guys, I guess, leaning up against the wall, almost like they were waiting for him, dressed in black clothes. One of them came up to her and said, we know what you saw inside. Just forget about it. Don't talk about it. You want to forget about it. And then they said that these guys just kind of like walked around the corner and were gone themselves.
And see, even saying that, I would probably forget it easier if I didn't have very threatening or strangely ominous man outside telling me, you didn't see anything. You didn't see that lady. It's like, well,
yeah, that would
probably
would have.
Probably would have just disappeared and not thought about it, right? So kind of the Men in Black shoot themselves.
Makes you think about it even more.
It almost makes you say, though, well, if they've got these handlers, why does she have to go out? And maybe she wants to pick certain styles to find for this weird baby herself. I don't know. It could be one of Crescent. We know that Crescent has lots of babies. David Huggins has fathered many, many babies, and maybe they got a certain style they want to stick to.
Well, it's obvious that this was deliberately set up. All right. I mean, this was not just something that happened at random. All right. It was like you said. If this was just a random incident where these people just happened to see, one of these mimics, one of the others, so be it. But you've got this woman and the baby carriage deliberately crossing paths with these women. I mean, going out of their way to make sure that they see what's going on. And then, like you said, then the guy afterwards coming up to him and saying, "No, you didn't see anything." Of course, I'm going to remember it then even more. So for whatever reason, it was a deliberate encounter.
See, fiction had it good when they made those Men in Black movies to give them that little stick where you forget things. Right. Because evidently that technology really doesn't exist because people are like, yeah, I saw the Men in Black. And I was like freaked out. Like they're weird.
Yeah, they seem to talk about them quite a bit for them.
Yeah, that definitely Hollywood definitely solved that loophole that the Men in Black created, because the Men in Black are also would consider as mimics others. They are the types that are pretty much straight up. It seemed like federal agents, human people, but then there's the guys like this who are very weirdly alien. This is from a Canadian show. I believe it's from the show Creepy Canada, who did a great segment on the Men in Black
burn victims. I mean,
where they would show up at someone's house and say, "Would you like a picture of you or your family?" And they're there's definitely something very alien looking about them, and you can definitely put them under the mimicry umbrella as far as like, well, what are they? They're not quite alien. They're definitely humanoid, but they're not human. What are they, and why are they also with a strange woman? Because we don't see the women in black. Maybe this is the female counterpart, is the strange wife shopping for the baby, and they just have to take the wife to buy the clothes, and they have to buy clothes that are
completely black because our sun burns them.
All right. Thank you, Marjorie Higdon. That's a Future Club. I'm giving people spoilers for episodes coming out soon, but
I look forward to that one. Well, we do have women in black stories, but Nick Redfern actually wrote a really excellent book with that title, Women in Black. So I didn't want to encroach too much. Yeah, I didn't want to encroach too much on work that he's done, though I reference him, several times, in our book, because some of the things that he's been approached with just perfectly fits within our categories of the others. And I should point out that the Men in Black don't necessarily have to appear as Men in Black. We have probably just as many stories of people who are dressed somewhat normally, not dressed all in black, but have the physical characteristics that are just really weird. The either extremely white skin to the point of having almost no pigment at all, even though the eyes tend to be normal, not pink, like if you were dealing with an albino, to people who have almost dark olive colored skin, maybe they're from of Mediterranean origin or something.
Yeah, kind of how I think Keel described them as looked like they were Laplanders. They were from Lapland. That was the best way that he could describe it, in the Mothman thing, which is interesting to think that they were the mimics or things showing up in Point Pleasant around the 60s, around that time. But another great part of the mimics that you bring up, which is, I mean, it definitely fits in what you think of them as aliens, is Valiant Thor. The most humanoid-looking man. There's actual pictures of this man. I think he would fit into that. But where do you fall on Valiant Thor being a mimic?
Well, Valiant Thor was part of the contactee movement that started in the 1950s with people like George Adamski and Howard Menger, and Reverend Frank Stranges was the one who had the communication with Valiant Thor.
There's a lot of Venusian action back then.
All of these were supposedly beings from planets within our own solar system. And they all are almost inevitably described as being tall, beautiful. Sometimes they would have long hair, blue eyes, alabaster skin, just, almost the equivalent of space-aged angels, or at least, what people were thinking of angels without the wings. So Valiant Thor was one of these space brothers. He was from Venus, and a picture that we have in the book with Valiant Thor, and then two other people that were supposedly also from his spaceship. Another man that people were saying was his brother, and then this woman.
That was one part of the story I had never really become aware of until reading your book. And they have great names. They're like Liff and Tiff or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where those.
I could actually look through it, but
came from.
I don't want to spoil too much. But they have two ridiculous, almost Ewok sounding names. They're great names. They're not as cool as Valiant Thor of all things, but that whole the whole thing of humanoid interaction as far as alien beings, these mimics of the time. Yeah, the contactee movement of that time is as full of them. And there was someone you brought up in the book, and I wouldn't exactly call her an alien or a contactee. It was a woman named Avril Jensen. And I don't really know much about Avril Jensen, but she's a woman who was born in that she felt that she was an actual, an alien born into human skin. That when she was very young, she would build, complicated things, and she never quite felt human. But you did include her as a mimic, which I thought was interesting.
Well, this was, I think that came from a chapter written by Nigel Watson from the UK, and he lists several people who feel that they could be what were called walk-ins. And these were supposedly people at some time in their life, usually when they were a kid, may have had an accident, and the original soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it, left, and then say like an extraterrestrial spirit came and take, and took their place, So now with all of these stories, I always approach them with, my tongue in cheek, because, I don't believe anything, because I don't want to set myself up into thinking that these are the only answers. So, like with the UFO phenomena, there are people who are like, the UFO phenomena, extraterrestrials from other planets, that's it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that with any of this stuff, because new information may come to me down the line that would blow all of that out of the water. And I want to be able to be accepting of new information. So, if you read this book, Just take into mind that what we consider mysteries now may have an easy explanation down the road. All right.
Yeah,
So
nothing's set in stone yet. We still have many discoveries to make.
So when it comes to these walk-ins like Avril, it's interesting because the stories always kind of play out the same way. That at first they have no idea about what happened to them, but some catalyst in their life will almost like reawaken these memories. That then they'll say, somewhere along the line, I was not from this earth and I came here from someplace else. Now I'm living in an earthly body. So, whether or not extraterrestrial source, interdimensional source, what have you, it's still that interesting phenomena of a non-human entity disguising itself. Yeah, it's really hard to say. Playing the role of a human, so it's there could be just a number of different explanations, but I'm not going to go and try to and seek them right now.
Kind of lends credence to like the eccentric, intelligent people of the past that have led to so many like important discoveries that we now take for granted today. Mm-hmm. Like say Tesla, for example, was
right.
A guy that was rumored to be able to get his ideas from the stars, from outer space, that he would absorb it into his head as somebody was like talking to him. And I kind of wonder how many other people in the past that have really contributed greatly to society or technology, anything like that, have just not quite us, but are us in that sense. So I mean, you do kind of make some good points into that.
Oh yeah. Tesla is a good example. I think he was all too human. I think that it just shows just the incredible things that we're capable of doing. But I think that there is there are other people that throughout history, like you said, they seem to be able to have that ability to tap into that, maybe the Akashic record, as it's called, that universal knowledge base that, and then be able to bring it down into our reality as best as we possibly can with our feeble brain, all too human brains.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we have our modern day Teslas too. We have our Joshua P. Warrens or BigfootTooth.coms and stuff like that. But I want to say that as far as yeah, I'm sorry about that. But now Jack hosts a ghost show or a show called Spirits and Spirits, where they talk about spirits being alcohol and spirits actual ghosts and things of that nature. But
I love both.
You touch on that in the book, and something that I thought was fascinating, which is living ghosts as far as being mimics. Now, could you tell us a little bit about living ghosts?
Sure. Well, and these stories came to us from Paul Dale Roberts, one of our other writers, and he's a paranormal investigator out in California, and he has investigated just some fantastic accounts. And like you said, the living ghost. This was one of the stories that he wrote about. Was people that had moved into this house. And almost immediately, they would see these full-bodied apparitions in their living room that was of a man and the woman, and it appeared like there was never any audio. They could never hear what the conversation was going on, but it appeared like that they were arguing, and that the man would like slap the woman down to the point where they were thinking that they were seeing like a ghostly reenactment of a murder scene, right? So later, they were at a neighborhood party. They were being welcomed into the neighborhood, and they asked their neighbors who lived in the house previously, and had there been, like a murder going on. They come to find out that the apparitions that they were seeing were people who did live in the house, but were still very much alive. That the husband had been violent and a wife beater. But they were now divorced. The wife was living like a few miles away, and the husband had moved out of state. So these people were seeing
living ghosts,
living
people
ghosts.
we could be
Yeah.
ghosts. People could be reporting something you did, Jack. I don't know whoever.
It is true. Drea and I actually have discussed that before in the past about like people that would just, it's such an emotional situation that you're in that they're imparting that emotional energy into that time, and it gets replayed over and over
That
and over.
negativity.
It just gets stuck there.
Under the right conditions and with the right viewers. I think you have to be, have some special abilities of your own to be able to see these kind of things. But then Paul also writes about doppelgangers, where people who are experiencing a haunting in a house, whatever it was that was going on in this house would appear and look like a family member.
Yeah.
The daughter, especially a teenage daughter, at times the mother would see what she thought was the daughter in the kitchen, talk to her. The daughter would just ignore her. Not unusual for a teenager anyway. But then she would turn around and realize that the daughter was actually in her room. That this was the ghost manifesting and looking like somebody else.
To me, a doppelganger is probably the creepiest form of. I mean, this is the situation where imitation is not flattery.
Well, because you have to kill them, right? You have to immediately, like, you can't let your doppelganger go. But no, that also touches on the idea of, parallel universes and, I don't know, multiverses. I have a recent story of my own. I think I've talked about the show before, where I walked in and I don't remember this, so I don't think it was actually me, but I came into our bedroom and I asked my wife, I said, is this a universe where William is my son? And she said, yeah. And I don't remember this interaction. I don't know what, even with a lot of spirits in me, I don't think I would be asking what universe I was in. So I'll take that as a strange, maybe a doppelganger living ghost moment.
Next time Chris should just give you the wrong answer. Just be like, no, this isn't that right one.
You're in the wrong one.
You're the wrong one, yeah.
Just really mess you up later on.
Well, he might have stayed. That might have been the problem. I'm glad that, like, she told this guy, like, no. Oh, yeah, William is your son here. Oh, I'm in the wrong place. I have to go. I'm the one who, I'm the no kids. I'm the no kids guy. Like,
yeah, I'm out of here, yeah.
I guess that's my problem. I would have messed with you like that. But it's just me.
So, and I'm going to ask, and thanks, people, for showing up for the chat. We didn't get to pimp the show a lot. So if you got any questions from Tim, get those ready. But I also want to talk about, of course, probably the biggest version of mimics when we think of alien stuff in our world. That is, of course, the reptilians, who are the kind of most prominent alien species that we kind of think of as mimics that a lot of people like to take scenes off television, such as this, where they can, there's a whole genre of YouTube where they love to just take videos of newscasts and just try to find out if they are okay. Well, that's from the show V. But
that's a little different. Yeah.
But that was it's different. But that's what V was.
It is true. I have gone down that rabbit hole before on YouTube and have seen the videos of people that will, blink sideways and things like that.
Yeah, we watched a great video of Elvis weirdly shapeshifting in one of his last concerts. And of course, that guy was pretty much, the guy who posted it was pretty insane. It was a very bad camera footage, but
was this early or later Elvis?
Oh, this was about a week before he died, Elvis. This was very, very late period Elvis.
I believe that one was actually real then, probably.
That could have been the mimic. He could have already been dead and the mimic was doing a bad job. But reptilians being, would you say probably the most prominent, maybe most popular or known version of mimics?
Oh, possibly. It's to me, it's amazing how the reptilians have come back again, really, in the conspiracy circles. I mean, now you're hearing people talk about some using political enemies. Certain groups are saying, "Oh well, these guys are actually baby eating reptilians." And,
it doesn't help that Mark Zuckerberg looks so weird too.
Yeah.
He always like that picture of him surfing where he's got all the emotion on him. Yeah,
perpetuating the stereotype.
Yeah,
but
we're on YouTube right now, so he can't touch us. So,
but if once again though, if you go back through history, you'll find that this human looking reptile is a very popular form and a being that has interacted with humanity throughout history. I mean, the Bible, some people would have said that the snake in Genesis was actually a reptilian, that rather than being our enemy was actually the thing that freed us, gave us
and gave us our choice too.
Well, yeah, it gave us knowledge, because before, I mean, we were just like, like pastoral slaves almost, but then we ate the apple and our brains expanded and that was it. Yeah,
humanity wouldn't have gotten anything done if we were allowed to stay in that garden anyway. We had everything we needed there. We would have never built anything cool like computers and made podcasts or anything like that. I'm going to check in real quick. I think we got some questions. Any new books in the works, Tim?
Oh, well, we just released Mimics, just, not that long ago.
This is very recent, yes.
Yeah, it's very recent. So right now, myself and my cadre of writers are actually tossing around some ideas of maybe what we would like to do next. Time travel and the mysteries of time and space seems to be a popular topic that everyone keeps coming back to. So, maybe
an interesting one.
Yeah, we may approach that, right.
You could slip some time slips in there. I always find those very fascinating as well. People that can slip out of time to briefly be in a different time, but definitely be on this world. And there's stories of people where this happens, where there are other people there, and they both realize and look at each other like, "Hey, we are not in our time anymore," and they're just quickly brought back to ours. That's a great topic, and I know we're getting close to closing, but you of course came to us. We first talked to you because you released the Jeff the Mongoose book. You appeared on Coast to Coast AM talking about Jeff the Mongoose. That's kind of how it started very early on with the Unbelievers podcast. We did an episode about it. And next thing I knew, Coast to Coast is talking about it, and you were on there, and that's kind of what brought you to us. And of course, I'll say we got the Jeff the Mongoose book here, but I want to ask you, do you keep up on the Jeff the Mongoose beat?
Oh, as much as I can. I mean, you have to remember this was something that took place in the 1930s. So, I doubt if there's really going to be any new information coming on down the line, but you never know.
I know you're aware. No, I know you're aware of this. That's why I wanted to bring it up. So, Nandor Fodor and the Talking Mongoose movie is coming out soon with Simon Pegg as Nandor
some big
Fodor.
Names in there.
Yep.
They are some big names. And really, this was
Lloyd I see there. That's
and you should see my name in the closing credits. So
that's great. That's awesome.
Somewhere in there. I don't know. Probably.
Now, were you a financial supporter, or did they use some of your writings for source material?
Yes, to both.
Okay, there you go. Because I was about to say this is one of the rare. And it's beneficial to use if people. There's a movie out there, and people are going to want the books too. So, I see how it works. That's good call. Good on that. And I will say I'm excited. How could I
resist?
I know, right?
I don't blame you one bit.
It looks very interesting. I can't wait, and I want everyone to go check out his book. Check out Tim's book, please. Mimics the Others Among Us. Oh, I'm trying to get good at this, man. I got so much fun stuff.
That leads me to a question here, because I think this is a pretty important question. Where can people find your book if they were so interested to get it?
Sure. Probably the easiest place would be Amazon.com.
Right.
Just go in, type in my name or Mimic Sailors Among Us. We have it both as a print book and as an ebook. Working on getting it into physical bookstores. That's a little bit more difficult for independent publishers.
Yeah.
But we're working to do so. But Amazon's probably for that fast, instant gratification.
Oh, it was. I ordered it.
Definitely find that easier too. But
it is, and I'm gonna say, and it's one thing. I guess people are still reading books on tablets and stuff like that. I love owning the physical book, and yours is great. It's got a lot of great pictures that like I was trying to find some of them to be able to put up on the stream here, and they were almost impossible to find. I almost wanted to take pictures of the pictures in the book to put them up here, but I'm not going to do that because you got to go out and get the book and see them for yourself. There are some great ones out there. I love the book a lot. I mean, well, I was able to find the ballerina girl who was great. One of my favorite mimics, and this was definitely after U2's popularity was waning. So this was not Bono's girlfriend or anything twirling around out there, even though this was on the other side of the pond. But thank you so much, Tim Swartz, for being on, returning guest, returning champion. And thanks for being on the first episode of Russ and Jack's Believer Skeptic. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask you now, Jack, are you a believer? You believe in mimics?
You know, I honestly don't. No, I feel like we were both very believer on this entire episode. But I mean, there's certain things like I'm obviously not going to come right out.
You never seen a weird baby? Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean that weird babies aren't out there. There could be a lot of weird babies.
I've had 3 kids. They all look weird.
Yeah, I started to say a lot of babies look weird.
Like every single one of them. You know, it's hard to put that off. I'm definitely going to keep my eye open now because I do see a lot of weird people out there, and I'm gonna keep my eye open and see if I can't see one myself. You know,
all right. And you might be getting a visit very soon for being on here. Yeah, sorry, they're going to threaten us out of here. All right, I want to thank everyone. Let me check the chat before I go. I want to thank everyone who hung out in the chat. Yes. Oh my God. Wait, here we go. Wait. Oh my God. Simon Pegg's name's Jeff. No, he's not Jeff. I think he's Nindor Fordor.
Yes.
We got some people here. I definitely want that book. Yeah, you do. And thank you so much for being on. We'll have to do something again, Tim. It's great having you. And thanks everyone for hanging out for the first episode of, hey, this went pretty good. I'm still staying the believer. Jack, you're staying the skeptic. Tim, you want to plug your social media? Where can people follow you at?
Sure. Probably the easiest would be my website, which is conspiracyjournal.com. And as I always say, we have all the weird news and information that they don't want you to know.
That's right. And you can go listen to your podcast as well, right?
That's right. Yeah, the Paracast on...
Listen to Paracast. I think George Norrie said it very weird on your Coast to Coast appearance. He called it like... I don't even want to say what he said because I'm not going to make that kind of faux pas because I won't do that. But thank you so much for being on. Thank you. Use your imaginations on that one, guys. And that's it. Thanks, everyone. Let's get out. Oh, you like that music? Let's get out on it. Good night, everybody.
Right. Thanks.
Her permission, her favorite position. She told me
these questions must stop,
cause she can't be dissuaded until she had made it with someone who ranked at the top. She said,
I am looking for the man, and I can't save it from his land. My fine body is the key to set your people free. I'm needed in DC. Now please, now please, take me to your leader. Take me to your leader. I've got much procreation for black and Caucasian. Take me to your leader.